I had a lot of fun thinking about asking the correct questions about whether or not you should go into software engineering. You will notice that the questions I asked were quite general and broad and didn't even really go into the ins and outs of whether software engineering would be the best fit for you in general. That of course is coming up, but I find that videos that try to address the issue directly tend to give a very cookie cutter view of what life is as a software engineer, and that I don't like. Which, in my experience, if it doesn't cut straight to the essence of what it is to be a software engineer, then you're just misleading the folks. I still think the best way to understand what it's like to be a software engineer is by following the life of a relatable-ish software engineer in a story-like format. That way, you'll actually get a human perspective of what it's like rather than a Hollywood blockbuster or professional documentary. So far, I've not actually gone into what it is I actually really do, but like most stories, this one has started off slow, where I'm just introducing you into various things that will make the journey easier. There are still many adventures up ahead, so there's a lot to look forward to. Today is going to be the first episode of a series where I'm not specifically talking about software engineering, but instead we'll be talking about something that is relatable to all of us. However, still through the lens of a software engineer. Or to be more specific, through the lens of a systematic and rational thinker, which isn't technically just limited to engineering, maths and science. Today, what I'll be talking about is how to decide how viable any given career for you is. This is important to talk about because everyone at one point will have to choose whether or not going into a particular career is viable. It's even becoming increasingly common and expected that people will pivot or upgrade into different careers multiple times in their life. It's bad enough when you're trying to make the decision on your own, but if you're trying to convince a loved one, be that a parent or a partner, it can oftentimes become difficult to intelligently talk about the situation without things becoming emotional. Hopefully, using the system I will outline, it will be easier to quantitatively reason about the situation, which increases the likelihood of coming to an amicable and well-informed decision. Getting a little personal now, it even happened to me just recently, and even if it's not clear already, I am a fairly disagreeable person. Hopefully I come across respectfully agreeable though, as I haven't really had any personal vendettas to carry out, at least not recently. Recently I decided to pursue a better paying gig because I thought that I had the skills to back it up. Unfortunately, because of coronavirus and also HMRC legislation, it's hard to even line up an interview. My dad suggested I should try aim lower and start at nearer to the bottom, closer to an entry-level position. Honestly, the thought of doing something like that made me shudder. I would much rather go do Deliveroo or even work on a startup than going back to working at such a level. Even previously working at a senior level was starting to get a bit boring as I was looking for more of a challenge. Going even lower than that would have honestly ended me. So I kept on applying anyway, and I finally managed to get into the 2 interview processes, in which I got to the final stage in both. And luckily for me, I got offered one of the job opportunities, which I'm currently in, so I can't complain. If I had the quantitative reasoning behind my decisions on paper, it might have been easier to sell him on what I was doing. He wasn't sold, but like I said, I'm disagreeable, so I just went ahead anyway. Let's start with the easiest factors to represent quantitatively: the career competency to compensation distribution. What we have in front of us is an empty graph with competency running along the x-axis and compensation running along the y. If you have forgotten how graphs work, here is a one-liner refresher. Graphs are a visual representation of a relationship between two or more things. These things can be anything as long as you can have a quantitative value, like how many children Mrs. Bleh had. 69. If you're wondering, or how much does John weigh? Wow, that's a lot. Here are a few normal examples of useful graphs, and that's stretching the definition of normal quite a bit. On the x-axis, competency is measured by percentile, which is a fancy way of saying if you ranked everyone from worst to best, how much better are you than the rest of the people in your career? Scoring close to 0 means that you are amongst the worst, and scoring close to 100 means that you're amongst the best, while 50 means you're average. Now on the y-axis we have compensation, which is how much you can expect to earn per year depending on competency. Now we can form a relationship and draw a line for a given career using statistics that we can find online. Each career will have a different graph, and it may take a bit of effort to draw said graph. Now, one important thing to note is that you're not actually going to find any statistics out there that will compare competency to compensation, at least not for a lot of fields. But you should find statistics that just flat out shows what percentage of people earn what salary. Then you can just convert that statistic directly into compensation versus competency by making a naive assumption that the people getting paid more are indeed more competent, right? While competency versus compensation was the first relationship that came to my head when constructing this graph, it really does make the naive assumption that compensation increases alongside with competency. In certain disciplines like professional sport or gaming, then this does tend to be closer to the case. But I can imagine for a more subjective field like art that doesn't hold true as well. This is because competency is not always easy to measure. If your discipline revolves around constant competition which produce measurable results, then this becomes easier. However, most fields don't actually have any standardized way to measure performance across people that participate in it. So instead, I'll change the relationship from competency versus compensation to capacity versus compensation.